Good afternoon, everyone. This is Quinny Clem with Quinny's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have a special guest. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us about you?
Okay, my name is Tiffani Quarles Sanders. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. I am the writer of four books. Two are in the same series: Unthinkable Sins, one and two, The Family, Runaway Soul, and Let Sleeping Dogs Slide. I am a historical fiction African American writer. Um, and I just love telling stories more than I do anything. Is I love telling stories, historical stories, fictional.
Okay. You say you're a historical fiction writer.
Yeah.
What attracted you to that genre?
I don't know, maybe because my parents and my grandparents, the way they would tell stories, and I guess you have to know a little bit of background of me. I'm from Alabama. So, as you know, Alabama has a rich history of civil rights. And I'm from Montgomery. I was a child of parents that were the first to go to college, in which they went to a historical college, and they went during the 60s when they were protesting. So, of course, I heard those stories. I lived in a neighborhood that was the first of many of the neighbors. All of the neighbors were Black, African American. And they were the first to do this, the first. So I went through those experiences, lived around those people. I was so blessed to have great neighbors. My neighbor on the right of me was a student of Booker T. Washington. He went to Tuskegee. He was a student of George Washington Carver. He graduated in the 50s, and they didn't have family. Him and his wife did not have kids. So I was able to be blessed with that. And then I had a neighbor on the other side that was the son of Miss Breyer. She was the one that was arrested um, before Rosa Parks was
Mhm.
arrested. So I was really blessed to have all. In her case, was one of the cases that brought about with the integration of buses. So I was really blessed here in Montgomery. And then I had grandparents that, and I tell people all the time, slavery is not that far away from us. My grandmother's grandmother was a slave. So from her mouth to my grandmother, and then my grandmother would tell the story. So I was blessed to have parents and grandparents that was happy to share those stories with me. So that's who I am. All of that is mixed in me. All those stories in a fictional tale.
Oh, okay. Now, briefly tell us about your four books.
Okay. My first book that I wrote was Unthinkable Sins, and it's about an older lady by the name of Hattie Durham, and she gets Alzheimer's, and she begins to relive her stories of what happened to her and start telling secrets. You know, sometimes we have those secrets. We hope that they die along with us. Well, with her Alzheimer's, she started telling some of those secrets. And let's just say Hattie Mae was something else.
Yes, she was.
My next book that I wrote, and one of my favorites, is Runaway Soul. And that is of a lady by the name of Jackie. She has became accomplished. She became principal, teacher principal. However, because of fingerprints later on, right before she got ready to retire, she was scared that some of her secrets that happened many years ago in her old hometown would be told. So you basically go back to the journey of what happened and how she went along with that journey. The last book that I wrote was Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. And that's basically, I kind of made this book because growing up, I would see all these successful people mingling together, and just basically, I wanted to bring home what I noticed as a child. And basically, um, again, someone died on his last deathbed. Some of his secrets were spilled, not by him, but by someone else. Um, so it's one of my Runaway Soul and Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. It's one of those stories it will pull you in, and you have to read it all the way through to find out what the secret is. But those are my two favorites.
Okay. Okay. Now, what was your writing process like?
Different processes doing different things. That with Unthinkable Sins, my father was actually passing. And I actually started with that book. Hold on, excuse me. I actually started with that book while he was passing. To kind of get, because we had to, sometimes there's a waiting game at the hospital. And I thought about my family members with Alzheimer's, and just it was easier for me because it was able to flow. Runaway Soul would wake me up at night. It was one of those things, it was kind of unrestless. It's like I would lay down and then something would say, get up because you need to write this down. And it actually started with a statement my mom made many years ago about a young lady that was from the area that she was from, and how her dad never did let her work for white people during the 50s and 60s. And the reason why was this young lady, I don't know who it was. She never did explain who the person was. Well, she was being raped by the person that she was, cleaning up the house for. And she said that she went and told the wife. And when she went and told the wife, the wife went back and told the husband. And the husband ended up shooting and killing her. So for some reason, my mom had been dead for some years, but for some reason, it just pounded on me. And that's where Runaway Soul got its life from, was that statement.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And from that point on, Unthinkable Sins was more of a thing that I wrote because I was sitting. Most of these stories kind of speak to me while I'm asleep, or when I'm resting, or when I'm taking those breaks, or something that I can go past something else. I remember my mom telling me something about that, or my dad, or my grandparents. And so that's the process. The only problem that I have right now when I'm writing, sometimes history can be so dark. And trying to bring that darkness to a little more light is the problem that I sometimes have. So that's my process of making sure, because right now I'm working on one called Reap. And it's can be dark, but bringing it back in is always my focus too, so that it won't be dark and it will be a lesson. And I want you to, when you're reading my books, I want you to understand the whole person. So a lot of times I will take you from the beginning at current, and I will take you back and let you see how this person was all the way through their life, so that you can understand them, because we all have flaws. And sometimes you have to understand what those flaws are to kind of work your way on down.
Now tell us about your publishing journey.
So I started off writing children's books, and it wasn't really for money or anything like that. It was just to have one for my daughter to read or my son to read. So I did like 2 books, one for my daughter, one for my son. Well, I really wasn't going to sell them, but I thought it was going to be, would be fun. Unthinkable Sins, when I started with Unthinkable Sins, it was like, okay, so I have this idea. I start writing it, and then I start getting editors to kind of work with me, because I've never written a book before. So Unthinkable Sins was a trial. Once I kind of got that together, it was kind of like trying to figure out how the writing process go. Because like I said, I'm not a writer. I am a storyteller. But for me to tell the story, I must write it down. So that was the biggest thing. So what I did was I started my own company, Hollow Bridge Publishing LLC. And each time I published a book, I would publish it under Hollow Bridge. I'm thinking about this new book. I'm looking into maybe traditional route more so, since I do have a little name to myself, not much, but I have some great readers, and I'm thinking about going the traditional route. I just don't know yet how that would look. But that's basically how I got into it.
Okay. How did you develop the plot?
Oh, I learned, like I said, I learned from that first book, Unthinkable Sins. I always wanted to, when I'm developing a book, what do I want to get from the readers to understand about this person? What complexities do this person have? What are we trying to accomplish as far as with this book? Because if it's nothing that I want them to understand, I want them to understand and relate to the characters. So the first thing I always do is sit down. I try to make sure I stay true to the time periods. And I know this is small, but I even go as far as going into what were the popular names during the period that I'm writing about. So if the person was born in 1900, I mean, I'm trying to find those names that fit, not only fit as far as the characters, because it may be a Mary. I may have known a Mary, and I will say, okay, that person kind of fits that person's name. So I details like that, I start off. That's the first thing I start off with. And then I work my way through as far as the character. I always try to do an outline. If that outline is not right, it takes, and just like now, usually like with Runaway Soul, Let Sleeping Dogs Lie, I wrote that like this because it was like out my sleep. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. The new book that I'm writing, it's a little more difficult. I had to change it 1,000 times because of the darkness of it. So that's basically how I do it. I make sure that the characters' names, if I don't do anything, and let me jump back to Runaway Soul. Runaway Soul was something that I really kind of, with the names, names is the biggest thing for me. I wanted to get into like nicknames. That was my thing. And I wasn't sure how my audience would take me using names that I would hear growing up, Black Daddy, and people have kind of gotten away from those type of names. So I did talk to, I know Suzette Harrison with Taffy. So I was talking to her. She was like, oh yeah. So she kind of encouraged me to kind of go on with the names that I did go on with, which is Black Gal within my Runaway Soul. So that's the biggest thing, names and that outline. I need to know where I'm starting and where I'm going.
Okay.
So,
Tiffani, can you tell us about how you came up with the titles of your books?
You know what? The funny thing is, I knew the title from the beginning. I mean, I knew exactly before I even start writing with every book, I know where the title is going to be. The only problem that I have is sometimes with the world being the way that it is now, I'm kind of scared to put titles out there like Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. It can be kind of, when you're reading it, sometimes it can be kind of like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to read a book like that. Mm-hmm. But I know what I want. It's like it just comes to me right then. And I never change it. When I get a title, it stays from the beginning. The title is the first thing I do. And everything else works around the title because in my head, I already know what around about what the story is going to be about.
Wow.
So,
can you share a snippet from one of your books?
Yes. Because Unthinkable Sins has been constantly still, doing top 100 in Amazon as far as African American historical. I'm gonna start from the beginning. One of my favorite. I don't know why. I just love this one. This is a crazy world we live in. It don't make no sense at all how people want to think that if somebody get hurt or wrong or has anything taken away from them, that they won't turn around and do the same thing to somebody else. And when you do, it don't mean you're not good, God-fearing person. It just means you have been taught well. Still, with everything I have been through, I never stopped going to church on Sunday, never stopped tithing when I could, never stopped praying to the Lord to have mercy on my soul of the dead who knew things I've done. Did I covenant? Did I kill? Did I lie? Did I plan? Did I steal? The people who know me would find it unthinkable of my soul to be stained with such sin. But know one thing, suffering don't make you a saint, neither does sacrifice. All I ever wanted was just to be loved. And this is by Hattie Durham. And basically, at the end of the day, she was a sinner. She was all of that. But all she wanted to be was love. She may not came about doing it the right way. And that's one thing about people. We don't come about doing things the right way. But a lot of times, this is the only way that we know how to get love.
What topics do your story covers and why are they important to you?
Unthinkable Sins, because I was living through memory loss with family members. That was something that was a topic. Runaway Soul was something that was on my mind. Growing up, being gay, now I'm not gay, but seeing people being gay was something that was frowned upon. And I remember some of the names that they would say, as far as with gay. And I just wonder. And then also I try to include, I am an educator, having students that are artistic. How did they function during a time that did not have all of the resources that they have now? So I wanted to make sure that I include that. And I wanted to see the women that I grew up with, those women that may not have been who you thought they should have been, but they helped the community anyway. And when I'm saying those type of women, I'm talking about people that ran shot houses. They were the rock in that community. They helped more than most people think, and they built a pretty good empire as far as businesses. And they did help the community. Now, they didn't do it legally because our resources during that time was hard. But they were the counselors. They were the people that kind of helped. So I wanted to include all of that I knew of growing up in the South, deep South. And which I try to do with all of my stories, to include everything that I experienced. With Let Sleeping Dogs Slide, I wanted people to see that in the 50s and 60s, not only in Tulsa with Black Wall Street, there were Black businesses all over the United States. And we pulled together and we worked with each other. And anytime we saw things that was coming, and until this day, we still kind of work with that, especially in my town. we still work with each other and try to say, hey, you know, there's this job, that job. I wanted the readers to see how we kind of work together. And then again, I brought in the strong Black woman that you will see. So yeah, I that's basically it.
What did you learn when writing your books?
Oh, I learned that I had so much to learn. I had so much to learn. I mean, like I said, growing up, you would have never told me that I was going to be a writer, because writing in college and high school, oh Lord, I did not like it. But one thing I did like was to learn and read. I had to read because that was something that I had to do. And I love stories. So in order to connect the two, I have to be able to do them. So I learned the process of writing. I learned the different type of editors, learn how to go about it. Each time I'm writing, I'm keeping all of this in mind. And the biggest thing is I can write all this stuff if I want to, but I got to reach it out to people, get it out to people. So the business part of it was the biggest thing that I learned. Because had Unthinkable Sins been just a waste, I don't know if I would have gone on to the next book, and to the next book, and to the next book. So the business part of it and the writing process was the biggest thing that I learned.
What has influenced you the most as an author?
Like I said, the stories that was told to me by my grandmother about things that happened to her, well, not necessarily happened to her in her community, her small rural community, but to the people around her, that were basically told as a whisper, because you know, it was always, even till she died, it seemed like her and my granddaddy would tell these stories, and it was like, it was still like, it was scared to really say it. So those stories, I learned so much from my parents, you know, being participants in the civil rights movement during that time. My neighbors, I learned a lot from them. And I try to turn, when I'm talking to someone, I always ask, well, where are you from? Because I want to know who you are. I want to know a little bit about you, because I feel that everybody has a story. So I try to learn from everybody. I don't care if it's a child. I want to learn something from you when I'm talking to you.
Now, Tiffani, on a typical day, how much time do you spend writing?
Ooh, writing is something that is hard to get in with me. I will say, if I know that I have a novel, and this is something else I do, other than outlines, I do a writing outline. So right now, my writing outline is to get a chapter done. Once I got the outline out, a chapter a week. So right now, I'm working on another book. Every week, I have to have that chapter written and reviewed. And then I give myself, once I've written everything out, I give myself another week to read over it. And then I give myself another week to make sure that everything is final before I send it to the editor. So I don't really get in a rush when I'm writing my books. I really try to take my time writing books, because I feel that, you know, a lot of people like to get a book out as fast as they can. You know, I try not to do that, because I like to kind of take my time to make sure that, you know, everything is in place.
Okay. What is the most surprising thing you have discovered while writing your books?
Surprising thing I discovered was people gonna actually read my books. I I was like, you mean to tell me there's people out here that love history and love African? I mean, that was the biggest discovery, that people will actually take the time and say, or somebody say, oh, I've read your books. I'm like, you read my books? So yeah, that's the biggest discovery for me.
Wow. Now, Tiffani, what are you currently working on right now?
I am working on a book called Reap. Um, Again, that's that darkness. I was gonna take it real dark, but I said, and I have done outlines, probably 3 outlines, to the one that finally I decided, okay, this is the one I'm gonna work on. This one is gonna go back all the way back to the late 1800s. And it's gonna follow a young lady by the name of Liz and her family. And I'm super excited about this book. I'm kind of thinking maybe going traditional, maybe finding an agent at this point. I'm hoping that I have some type, God will bless with me with some type of opportunity to do that. If not, I will self-publish it again and just keep moving.
Okay. Are you saying reap as in reap what you sow?
What you sow. Yeah.
All right.
And it was gonna be reap what you sow, but I said, oh, Tiffani, take it back, so.
Oh, yes. So do you have any in-person or virtual events this year?
I do. I have one coming up, and you know what? That was the biggest thing. I have one coming up that's going to be in person, April the 30th in Birmingham, and I can send you that link. We're going to be in Birmingham. I don't know if I did get a thing saying it was going to be sold out. I'm not sure, but I will send that link to you. But it's April the 30th in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. And can you tell us how we can find you and your books?
Yes. You can go to Amazon. There's many different ways. You can go to Amazon, type in Tiffani Sanders or Tiffani Quarles Sanders. Or you can go to my Facebook page, Tiffani Quarles Sanders. That's TIFFANIQUARLES Sanders, SANDER.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
Well, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you. Oh, this is my dad. I don't know if I told you, a lot of my stories come from, I don't know if you all could see this picture. A picture of my dad that an artist out of Atlanta did. She does wonderful work. Her name is Summer Page. She does, if you look her up, she does wonderful work. But when I said influences, my dad was a chitlin circuit singer, which he would go around to different cities and perform. And this is him in the 60s. So I try to include, like I said, I try to include everybody that have influenced me. And one day I want to do one on music. So hopefully that will be the one. So, but I just want to take the time for those that have read my books. I don't care if it's Unthinkable Sins, Runaway Soul, or Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. I want to really take the time out to thank you, because you didn't have to do it. And I thank you I get inboxes all the time from people saying that they really enjoyed my books, wonderful reviews. I just thank you, because at the beginning of this journey in 2015, I did not think, and it's just a blessing how God would just put you in situations 10 years ago you would have thought that this would never be. So I just have to take the time out to thank them. And if you haven't read my books, go out there and read them. You would not be disappointed. Look out for my next book, hopefully by next year, Reap. And thank you.
You're welcome. Now, can you show? I've got to ask you to show your 4 book covers.
Okay. This is Unthinkable Sins, Miss Hattie Mae.
Mm-hmm.
She was my first one. And then I had to say, oh, I'm not finished yet. I'm going to come back. Because the fans was like, wait a minute, you ain't finished with this one. So I came back with Unthinkable Sins to the family so that you can get a closure to it. And then my third book I came out with, I think it was 2017, was Runaway Soul. And then my last one that I did was Let Sleeping Dogs Lie.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for having me. All right. Thank you.
This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.